For many adult dancers, Pointe is the dream, whether it's returning to it after years away or starting for the very first time. But how do you actually know if you're ready? And if your teacher says not yet, what should you do next? This is the first episode in a three-part series dedicated to the entire adult Pointe journey. From determining if you're ready, to navigating your first year, to building a sustainable training plan for the long haul. And I'm so excited to be joined by the amazing Julie of Broche Ballet, who's coached hundreds of adult dancers, myself included, through the process of going on Pointe. If you've ever wondered what readiness for Pointe actually means, or worried that a not yet was the end of the road, we're diving into all of it in this episode. Julie also debunks some of the common myths surrounding adults going on Pointe and why it's more accessible than you might think. Just a quick note before we begin. This conversation is not a substitute for an individual evaluation, so make sure you're approved by a qualified teacher and fitted by a professional before going on Pointe. The information presented in this episode does not constitute medical advice. Please consult a licensed medical professional regarding any injuries or pain. If you're looking for a clear roadmap for your Pointe journey, this series is packed with insights that will leave you feeling seen and empowered. Ready for part one? Let's get into it. Hello, Julie. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to chat about this topic of Pointe with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Hannah. It's really excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, so this is going to be a three-part series that we're going to do all about Pointe and really centered on some of the most commonly asked questions that you receive as a teacher and just even things that I see kind of floating around social media. So I would love to start with a question that I do see on social media, which is that broader question of, are adults even allowed to go on Pointe? And as a teacher, what is your response or reaction to that question when you see it come up?
It's such a sort of interesting and loaded question in a couple of ways, because I think you've got a couple of areas that you could answer this question in. Like, are you allowed, as in aesthetically? There's a lot of talk around aesthetics of Pointe, like how it looks, right? Ballet is about more than aesthetics, but on social media, especially, there's so much about the aesthetic of someone on Pointe. There's are you allowed safety wise to be on Pointe? Are you going to injure yourself, or are you going to be safe while you do it? And then number three, I think there's also, are you allowed, as in terms of the amount of experience or the level that you've reached to go on Pointe? And there's some differences and discrepancies there, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But I think when it comes to the safety piece of it, we're talking about adults here. We're talking about adults who have a potentially lifelong dream of getting up on Pointe and have the capability of making decisions about their own safety and their own risks that they're taking. As teachers, we want to guide them to be as safe as possible and as ready as possible for their body, and can give them as much knowledge and training and help as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, we're talking about an adult here who we can inform of all of the risks. And at the end of the day, it's, are you allowed to take a risk with your body and with what you're doing? There's different answers to that, right? There's people who are on different sides of that spectrum there. But this is one of those things where, are you allowed to wear a super tall pair of high heels when you have wobbly ankles? Are you allowed to get a pair of roller skates and go out to the park and roller skate? Are you allowed to go bungee jumping? There's so many things in society and in that are available to us that fall under this question. And I think in ballet, Pointe is not unique in that regard, where it's something kind of dangerous that we're aware of the risks and we decide to do it. So that's maybe a bit of a controversial take there in the beginning, but that's my thought. That's like what we're like. I don't teach, we're not talking about kids. That's a different situation. They don't have the ability to make that type of informed decision about the risks they're taking with their body and their bones and everything. When we're talking about allowed aesthetically, I think the ballet has just an enormous amount of gatekeepers in it. I think we're all aware of this. I think it's getting more friendly, especially towards adults, but still, around social media, there's a lot of people who think you shouldn't be allowed to do ballet. If you look a certain way, if you move a certain way, if your ankles are shaped a certain way, if your feet are shaped a certain way, whatever it is. Like, we all wish this wasn't the case, but it is still kind of the case.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is usually from like the gatekeeping perspective. Because ballet, like you mentioned, it does have a very closed kind of feeling to it. It's like almost like an insider's club, and so I think for adults that are wanting to start, it can feel like this, oh, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed in the club? Am I good enough to do this? And so, yeah, I think it is a very broad question, but yeah, to your point, it's like adult free will and agency, and then of course with the guidance of a qualified teacher It's something that adults can definitely do, and it's so fun to just see more and more people doing it. So,
Mhm.
the next question I would love to ask is, in your experience working with adult ballet students, I know you've seen that not everyone arrives at the point journey the same way. So, can you walk us through some of the different types of adult ballet dancers that you see approaching point?
I see mainly four different types of people approaching point. Number one is people who are returning from a long time away from point who had a very bad experience.
Yeah.
Number two is people returning from a long time away who loved it when they did it in the past. Number three is people who it's like a lifelong dream. They've always imagined it. They never thought it was available to them, but they just like have something totally inexplicable inside their body, like physically palpable, that they can feel that it says that you need to do this, like whatever it is, it's very deep inside your body. And then the fourth time is people who are like, I wonder what it's like to stand up on your toes. Like, I wonder what that's all about. I wonder what it feels like. And I wonder, does it hurt? And how does it work? And I think that sort of curiosity, but not so deep like person number three, who's like, I need to have this by like my 40th birthday or by my 60th birthday or like in this lifetime or whatever it is. So I think people who are returning who've had a bad experience in the past, these are generally going to be a little bit older in your middle age where they did point back in, let's say, the 70s or the 80s. And that was before all the technology we have now inside of the shoes. That was maybe with an old school teacher who said padding was not allowed and you had to just tough it
Bleed and
out.
suffer.
Yeah. Because that was how you earned your place,
Yeah.
in ballet or in the studio. They would have, I've heard horror stories. People that the teacher would have a random padding check, and it would make everyone take all their shoes off and just see if anyone had snuck padding in their shoe that day or whatever. Like terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would they do this to kids in the first place? Like, there's one thing to do that to adults who like are consenting to this, but then to do it to kids. Anyways,
Yeah.
this was what was
Trauma.
happening apparently back in the day. So these people who like had a love for it at a young age, got put on point, maybe too early, maybe at age 9, maybe at age 8. Everyone in the class got the same shoe. They didn't have all these brands and models. Everyone in the class got the same shoe. They were so hard and they weren't allowed to wear padding. And they were just like, well, how is anyone supposed to succeed in that environment? These people coming back are very interesting because number one, they often, funny enough, refuse to use padding because there's like some deeply ingrained like guilt going on that they're like very afraid to use padding. I'm like, your life will be so much nicer if you just put the pads if you put the pads in your shoes. But I also understand the training, the like deep, deep, deep training that they had from a young age. This group of people is often about reshaping how they view their relationship with pointe shoes because they had such a difficult time as a young kid and there was maybe so much shame around it or fear or pain or whatever it was. And so this person needs a very different mentality in this training because they're unlearning some difficult
Yeah.
things. They may already know how to do this. I mean, I've seen people who come back and had a bad experience and they can do all the technique. They can scoop susu, they can échappé, they can relevé passé, they can do it all, but they're just like have such a heavy feeling around it. And so these people don't necessarily need a beginning point class. They may need a slow moving point class that, is not right in the deep end, but they don't need to maybe learn all of the same things as a total beginner, but they need to reshape their mind that like they are in a positive environment. They can try things, they can make a mistake, they can wear padding. Like this is their journey.
Yeah, like, you don't have to earn it with pain. You can just enjoy it and yeah.
Yeah, what a thing you just said. You don't have to earn it with pain, right? That's like actually kind of revolutionary for this group. People who are returning it and loved it when they were younger, I think they're a group to work with where they often again don't need a super beginning point class. They remember the details, especially if they trained to quite a high level. They remember it, they just maybe need to get back into it. They usually have a really fun time like rediscovering and discovering a new respect for their younger body of like how much they were able to do. And it's really fun to kind of see their own perspective of themselves change. I find that that's a big part of their journey. So they're like, wow, I was so strong and I didn't even know it. Or like, wow, I really, I had achieved such a high level and I didn't even realize it. Like they develop a newfound respect for themselves, which is kind of cool to witness. And then the people who are curious about pointe, they're just like, I wonder what this feels like. I wonder what this, what this might be for the feet. This group is a funny group because they often will succeed in their pointe shoes faster than the lifelong dream people. And I'll talk about why that is in a sec, but like this the pressure that the lifelong dream people put on themselves to be good right away is very high. So the curious about it people I find will actually sometimes put in more work to the goal because they're not so afraid that they won't achieve it. And once they get there, they're like so curious and playful about it that they'll like experiment a little bit more and kind of not care as much in a sense, which is
Yeah, a
like
little more
annoying.
relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like annoying as someone who cares a ton. And then you're just like, how are you,
Yes. Yes, I resonate deeply with what you're saying. I'm like, yep.
how is it that you don't care so much and you're getting better faster?
Yeah.
Like, that's the irony, right? For the type A's out there. And then the people who have a total lifelong dream about ballet, these are the people who email you and be like, it might be like 20 years before I'm ever ready for point. But so I'm not going to be asking if I could go on point. I'm not even asking you if I could try. I'm just saying I think it'll be about 20 years. And maybe like one day I could maybe think about doing a pre-point class at all. Right. This is like that's like how that
Yeah.
the fear, the distance that we create between ourselves and that lifelong dream is incredible when it's something that you really hold so deeply. And so for this group, often what needs to happen is the education that pre-point is actually for everybody, including runners and including rock climbers and including regular people who want to have stronger feet and be able to walk and enjoy their day.
Mhm.
Pre-point is not something you need to wait 20 years to start. Pre-point is something that every person should do even before they do ballet or without ballet. It is very important for your feet and for your strength and can be developed at any time and any place. And this is often a very surprising for people because they think that they can't even, like this a loud question that you asked me first, they think they're not even allowed to start practicing
Yeah.
for point until some buddy later says, you can now start thinking about it. Or like you're allowed to dream about it, or you're allowed to start strengthening your feet, or you're even allowed to ask what this is. Like they're almost even afraid to ask if
Yeah.
they're allowed to ask about point, right?
Mhm.
And afraid of assuming that they are allowed to join the journey to
Yeah.
point and like try to get started. So this group just like loves it so much that the distance can make it feel so much less attainable to them than it often is. Like that's way shorter. Like it's way shorter than people think it is in this particular group.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it, at least just speaking from this is the group that I personally identify with, and I think this is, like, kind of the imposter syndrome group too of, like,
Oh
who am
yeah.
I to think that I could do this thing? And
Yeah.
I know I was it's funny as an adult to be in a position where you're looking around, for someone to tell you that you can. You're waiting for that permission of, like, "Is
Yeah.
somebody gonna tell me that I'm allowed to do this?" Because 'Cause I'm afraid to ask because, like you said, you don't wanna ask and then you hold it so close that the fear of asking and then being told no is scary in a completely different way. But, yeah, it's just a very built up thing, and I do think that this is a lot of adults, and I definitely resonate with that one personally, for sure.
Yeah. It's this group is the most magical when they do get their point shoes.
Yeah.
They're crying, they're taking pictures, they're like they frame their first pair of
Yeah.
point shoes, maybe bedazzle it, whatever is going on, right? It's
Totally,
like
yeah.
it is like it is truly transformational for this group of people when they do get on point because it is them showing themselves that they can do something hard and that they've always dreamed of. And for many people, it even opens doors of other things that they've dreamed of in their lifetime that they've been too afraid to ask for or too afraid to speak up for
Yeah.
themselves and can really be like their wedge into who they want to be in their life and they're just afraid to even enter that and they say, oh wow, well I could do that and I thought it was impossible, like what else can I do in my life? And it can really open their world when they have the courage to ask and to step into the room and to get on the path and to actually get started.
So for someone who is listening to this and thinking, I really wanna know if I'm ready because, like I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of adults find themselves in that position where they're like, "I wanna do this, but I'm kind of waiting for someone to tell me if I'm ready," and especially if you're not at a studio, maybe that has, like, a program or, like, a set structure. I know for a lot of adults, maybe you're training online and you're like, "How would I even know?" So, what does readiness look like, and what are the markers that you as a teacher would be evaluating for someone who's coming to you and saying, "I wanna go on point"?
I think there's first of all a bit of a misconception or mislabeling of how getting on point works, where it seems like when you're starting out that if you just kept taking ballet classes, one day the ballet classes would turn into point classes. That's how I thought it would work when I first started ballet. That's how it seems like it would work. And that's how it seems like it would work based on what you see in the comment section of any
Yeah.
post, right? Just that you need to take more ballet classes. Always when people say, how do I get ready for point? More ballet class. And I always say maybe. It depends on what's going on in that ballet class. So let's talk about the what readiness means. And some of those areas ballet class is going to naturally give you, and some of those areas ballet class is not going to naturally give you. And again, depending on your class. Like when you're we're whoever's listening to this, no two of you listening to this are having the same adult ballet experience.
So true.
Some of you are in a program that's the same people every week, and
Yeah.
maybe it's the same people every couple of times a week. Some of you are in a big city where it's company members coming in to take class warming up before a show, and it's people who've never done ballet before, and they're all in the same room, and the teacher's doing their best to give everyone a good workout and keep people coming back, right?
Yeah.
So depending on what's happening in your class, your ballet class might be getting you ready for point, and it might not be getting ready for you, like you ready for point. So you could be taking ballet class for 5 years and not be ready, and you could be taking ballet class for 6 months and be ready.
Yeah.
It's yeah, there's other factors. So let's, without further ado, let's talk about those factors. But just want to preface that. So I split point readiness up into four areas of readiness. So, number one is your ankle and lower leg strength. So, this is your stability on one leg. This is your ability to releve smoothly, no sickles, no wobbles, um, no like almost catches in your feet where you're going up and then the ankles wobble side to side. This is how many releves you can do on one leg, on two legs, in plie. This is just general lower leg strength. Number two is that you have very dexterous toes, so that you can use your toes like hands, that you can use your feet like hands, so that you can articulate your feet. You can spread your toes out when you're doing your tendus. Your toes point as straight as possible for as long as possible and curve at the very end, as opposed to curving in,
Yeah.
pulling into your foot as you go. Now, it's not to say that they don't curve; they definitely curve, but you don't want it to be pulling in where your toes are tucking in towards your foot. They need to be long, straight, and curving. The third area we need to have is the flexibility in the ankles. This is your demi point range as well as your point range. Demi point range matters a little bit less, but your ankle and point range matters more. So um, the common thing is the pencil test. Can you lay a pencil across your ankle? I don't love that test just because depending on the shape of your ankle and then the shape of your toes, you can have a different circumstance and still be able to get up all the way on your box. If you have a little less flexibility in your ankles, but really long and very flexible toes, you can still get up on your box versus if you have a stiffer ankle and short toes that aren't that flexible, and neither are that flexible, right? It's a very different situation. So I prefer to basically measure the distance from your ankle to the floor and measure the distance of your pinky knuckle to the floor and measure and compare those distances so that they're basically the same height. People obsess over this one. This is the one that people obsess over. Like this is the what people will think is the arch shape. So the shape underneath your arch, the instep, the how curved your foot is. And in most cases, a curved foot is not as good on point as a straight foot. Um, if you look in like the first chapter of the old Vaganova manual, it says there, the very first sentence is that a curved foot is like not so suitable for point. It's ironic, right? Because now you
Yeah.
think that that's like the banana foot is so revered.
Yeah.
But banana feet are really like, if I see a banana foot come into my application, I am much harder on the strength and readiness of that banana foot than on a straight foot, because that banana foot's much more prone to injury than a straight foot.
Yeah.
So that people obsess over the curve of the foot, but it matters a little bit less than you think. It matters more how strong your toes are. So if you have a less flexible ankle, then you need very strong toes that can point past where your foot is so that they can point down into the shoe and help us support you getting up over the box. Then the fourth area is your general strength, stability, ballet technique. So can you control your hips and turnout? Can you control your core when you do a releve? My favorite test for this is just 8 releve passes in the center with nothing, not holding on to anything, 8 releve passes on each leg. If you're listening to this, you're like, oh, that sounds easy. Do it and film yourself.
And
Film
I was
yourself.
thinking that. I was like, God, can I do that? As you're
Yeah,
saying it.
it's very hard. I think some people will say a single pirouette is a driver of this, but I think
Yeah.
a single pirouette is easier than releve passes plain from fifth up and down, just straight up and down. There's no hiding. You can't use momentum to help you. It's just straight up and down, and you can really see, are you able to control yourself? And why this one matters, it's like if you are going to get a pair of stilts, like you're going to the circus and you're going to get a pair of stilts and you're wobbling all over the place, those stilts are going to be really scary and really dangerous. So I think people are often surprised to hear that core and glute and shoulder and upper body strength matter towards point, but we're literally giving you a pair of stilts, and
Yeah.
you want to be able to control that. And so within these four areas, I think there's if I were to break these four areas down into what I consider the two most important things, which is safety and success. So safety is like, are you going to hurt yourself? And success is like, are you going to have a good time?
Mhm.
Or are you going to leave every class crying and think you're not cut out for point? And that's just the worst possible thing that a teacher can do to a student is put them on point and then they believe that they're not cut out for it
Yeah.
because then they're not likely to try again. Like they'll think, okay, well, I tried it. Like it's not for me.
Yeah.
So safety, arguably, I think the success factor is more important than the safety factor. They're linked to each other, but as a teacher, you do a student a major disservice if you put them on point when they're not ready and then they believe that they're not ready. Because back to those lifelong dream people, if it's your lifelong dream, you try it once and it's terrible, and then you're like, oh well, I guess it's not for me. I'm giving up on that dream. Like it's
Yeah, it's
I
crushing. Yeah.
yes, crushing. It's crushing.
Mhm.
So lower leg strength is all about safety.
Mhm.
That's all about safety. Like, are you able to releve with good ankle alignment,
Yeah.
not sickling? Like that's all about safety. You're in the safer part of the shoe, not the dangerous part of the shoe. The ankle flexibility and mobility is a bit more about aesthetic. I think on social media, people complain all the time if someone is slightly off their box, like you're going to hurt yourself, you're slightly off your box. But in my experience, being too far over your box is more dangerous than being slightly behind your box.
Mhm.
It's like people dramatize the slightly behind the box. Like if you're
Yeah.
way, way, way behind the box and not able to get over, yes, it does put pressure on your Achilles tendon and all of this stuff. But like being slightly behind your box
Yeah.
is a bit more of an aesthetic thing than
Yeah.
people would make it out to
Yeah,
be.
because I would imagine it would be safer-ish to drop backwards, back on your
Right.
heel, versus than
Yeah.
to go forward and then your ankle is over, bending, hyperextending in the wrong direction versus just kind of plopping back onto your heel would be
Right.
maybe the better of those
Yes.
2 options. I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So there's like a minimum level of what you want
Yeah.
your ankle to be able to flex that you can actually get on point and enjoy the shoes, right? Because if you're not able to even get up there, like you're really just not going to have a good time. You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to straighten your knees. You're not going to be able to get on one leg. You're not going to be able to balance. You're just like, it's not going to be fun
Yeah.
at all. And then the technique part, I really consider is a big part of will you enjoy it? Because
Yeah.
if you're on the bar and you're hanging onto the bar and you're just stepping up on your stilts, like you're probably going to survive that, but you're going to get bored really, really, really fast because you cannot
Mhm.
do very much without the control of your body.
Yeah.
And if you have that control of the body, you're going to have so much more fun and
Yeah.
enjoy it so much more. And you won't have so many of the sticking points that you'll get in the beginning if you start before you can actually control your body. So that one's kind of like
Yeah.
for new dancers, for people wanting to get on point is like an annoying criteria because they're just like, my feet are strong enough, but like I can't hold my turnout. What's the big deal? And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it. But like point is going to literally take all your turnout from you because the shoes are satin and slippery. And if we
Yeah.
can't control it, you are going to like not have fun at all. And
Yeah.
like, I know you'll have fun getting your first pair of point shoes, but you won't have fun after about 6 months.
Yeah, I feel like that's the part where trust in the teacher is so big because there are things like I remember, getting on point and being like, "Wow, there are so many feelings I'm having in my body right now that I could not have anticipated until you are actually up on your shoes." Like you just
Yeah.
don't know what it's going to feel like to try to turn out, like you said, on satin little tips versus trying to turn out, on Demi Point with more grippy shoes and a larger surface area. And so there's just so many things I was like, oh my gosh, my body feels so different. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of those big pieces of just like trusting that the teacher knows because they have gone through this, because it is really hard to anticipate what
Yeah.
muscles are going to kick in and the things you're going to need. Like it's funny even to this day if I go, like a week without putting my point shoes on, or like we went on a trip and we were gone for 3 weeks, I put my point shoes on and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot just how many different little micro muscles kick in on point that are different even from just being on slippers," so
Yeah.
it's pretty wild, but really fun. I think that Point has helped me find a lot of things that I probably wasn't using properly on
Right.
Demi Point and in slippers, and so it is really cool because I think, once you've hit that baseline of, okay, it's safe enough for you to do it, one of the gifts of Point is that it does start to even help, I think, when you're not in your point shoes.
Totally. Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a bit about the question of like how much experience should you have before you go on point? And I think when we're talking about adults with fully formed bones, we're not just putting kids in ballet class until their bones are fully formed. You're deciding based on readiness and everything. And once you meet the safety and success criteria factors, then you go on point. It's going to improve all of your ballet. You're going to get so strong. You're going to work your feet so differently in tendus. You're like, oh, that's what they meant by articulating.
Yeah,
Oh, that's what they
totally.
meant by like that's what they meant by this. And it's like, oh, now I see why that. Like you kind of can't see
Yeah.
why those four areas that I just told you matter until you have point shoes.
Yes, totally. It's like it's such a trust thing. I think like you just have to
Yeah.
trust the process, trust the teacher. So and I guess that's kind of a perfect segue for maybe someone who's listening who has had a teacher tell them they're not quite ready. I know, that can obviously be a really hard moment, especially if you fall into the camp of someone who has put a lot of just hopes and dreams into this
Yeah.
experience of going on point. But from a teacher's perspective, what's really going on behind that decision? Why might it actually be the best thing for that dancer, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment?
That's just the hardest thing, right? You work up the courage, you go for it, and then you receive a no. And that's just one of the hardest things. And as a teacher, I have my beginner point program where people apply on a semi-annual basis, and sending those no's is just about the most gut-wrenching thing I do in my job. But what I always remind myself, and this is why a teacher might say no, is that the main regrets that I have as a teacher are when I've put people on point too early.
Mm.
I don't have, I mean, I try my best to live without regrets, as we all, I think, do. But, there's been a couple of times or a couple of instances, like long ago when I first started teaching,
Yeah.
where a person really wanted point shoes and they wanted it by this birthday or this milestone or whatever. The times where they truly weren't quite ready yet, and I put them on just because they really, really wanted it, it was so hard. It was so hard for them. And it was so difficult for them. It only happened a couple of times. You learn your lesson pretty quick. It was just so, so, so unenjoyable for them and almost like more crushing for them than that no was or would have been. If I had had the courage to give them that no and say, like, no, you're really not ready yet. We should really work on these areas before you go. That would have been really difficult, but it would have resulted in a much smoother point journey than saying yes too early and then having all of those bumps once you're in point shoes, which is already like, not to be dramatic, it's already kind of emotional. Like you're in point shoes, it's so intense, it's so hard, it feels way different than ballet slippers. It can be painful if you're not quite in the right shoes or you're not quite ready yet. And that like, feeling that you can't do it, that you can't do it on top of all of that is so, so, so difficult. So from my perspective, anyone who I've said no to, maybe some of you are listening, right? Because some of you have applied maybe and you're listening and I've said no to you.
Yeah.
It's because a yes when you're not ready is way more devastating than that no.
Yeah, and I would imagine from the student perspective, like, and I know it's easier said than done, but trying to focus on that it's generally speaking a not yet, not
Yep.
never. And so, to your point, it's like this isn't closing a door completely. This is just me speaking as though I was a teacher, like me wanting to give you the best possible experience when
Right.
you do go on point, not this can't happen for you. You'll never be strong enough. You'll never, because I think in the moment, whenever you have something that you really want that doesn't happen, it's easy to kind of go to the extreme of like, this just isn't for me. I can't do it. I'm not X, Y, and Z. But I mean, I would love to hear even to like your experience of maybe people that you have said no to and then seeing them develop and progress and maybe being able to come back and get approved and kind of what has that process looked like?
Yeah, definitely. I've had lots of people who I've said no to, and then they've come back and reapplied. And I think the most I've had someone take was 3 times through the application process of getting in. Usually the second time through, like once you kind of guide them with the right things and give them the plan, then
Yeah.
six months to a year down the road, usually they're ready to go. But the sense of pride that they all feel when they did achieve it and they really worked on those areas, and then they can see their own progress. They can be like, oh, I see what you meant there. I've improved on that and I can feel that I've improved on that. And then they go into point with wind in their sails and saying like, I worked for this, I earned this, I know why I am ready for point, not just like randomly ready. And they're just like, oh, are you sure I'm ready?
Yeah, and that's really amazing too that when you do have to say no, that you provide the guidance of like, here's what you can be doing because even though things are shifting and there's more, I'm seeing more studios are doing programs and stuff, there's still, I think, a need for just clarity and guidance in that area. And so it's really awesome that that's something that you provide so they can get stronger and come back and do it. I know there's a lot of messaging that's kind of fear-based around point shoes of like, your feet are gonna get wrecked, you won't be able to do it safely, it's too hard on your body. I think that's a big one that I hear, especially, as we're getting into like maybe our 40s or 50s or 60s, like it's point is just too much. But you said something that really surprised me, which is that a well-designed beginner point program can actually be safer than certain things that we do in a standard ballet class. So can you unpack that? Because I think that is a really interesting point, and I had never really thought of it that way.
Yeah, when we are let's say we go into a ballet class and it's a 90-minute class and we're, you know, 50, 60, minding our own business at the bar, enjoying ourselves. And then the teacher says it's time for jumps. Okay, let's say it's been 20 years since you jumped,
Yeah.
because why would you jump? I
Mhm.
mean, even ballet class, for the most part, our life doesn't involve jumping. We walk upstairs 1 foot at a time. We don't jump up the stairs. We don't run down the stairs, right? For the most part, a normal person, unless you're like involved in a super athletic endeavor, is not jumping. And jumps are just offered in class as like a normal standard part of class at the end of an hour and a half when you're exhausted. So you're just tossed into sautés, which are very fast. You have very little time to think. There's direction changes all over the place. There's agility back and forth. You're in ballet slippers, which aren't supportive at all.
Mhm.
Then you toss people into across the floor with a big leap, landing on one leg with
Yeah.
no information about how to hold their core, how to brace their landing, how to get their knee over their toe. And we shame them for not doing it.
Yeah.
And we say that you're whatever lazy if you sit out, or you don't want to look too old if you sit out, or whatever reason we have our own shame, or people have shamed us for not doing jumps at the end of class. And this isn't touted as something dangerous, but it
Yeah.
is.
Oh,
I
totally.
mean,
I know.
it's
It
I think
really
we all
is.
know someone who's tweaked something at the end of class in the jumps portion of class. I think we've all been in a class when someone hurt themselves during
Yeah.
jumps.
Yeah, it's always during
Um,
jumps.
it's
At
always
least that's
during
what it seems
jumps.
like, yeah.
Yeah, and like in jumps, it's very acute. You can't control. It's so fast. It happens in a
Yeah.
split second. You come down from the air, you twist something on the landing. You're thinking because you need glissade next, and you just came from jeté and whatever's going on, and you're not
Mhm.
focused on what's happening in your body. And and you're telling me that point shoes is more dangerous than this? Point
Yeah.
shoes in the beginning, in a beginner point class, if you do a beginner point class correctly, you're working on standing, you're working on prancing, you're articulating, you have two hands on the bar, you're going at a it's such a slow pace. You're going
Mhm.
slowly, carefully. And if we're talking about injuries, we're talking about chronic injuries for the most part. Maybe there's a quick one once you start getting the scoops or a releve scoop on one leg or a pirouette or something more explosive. But in a beginner point program, in a beginner point class, you're talking about slow movements that you could maybe develop a chronic injury, but then you have time to
Mhm.
decide I need a different shoe, I need a different massage technique, I need to stretch my feet more, I need whatever is going on to help you with that particular thing. Whereas at a jump, you're just
Yeah,
minding your own business. You
that's
come
right.
down from a soda shot and you threw your back out, right?
Mhm.
Then, I mean, the number of people who've emailed me that they got hurt in a class, like I had one woman who's 55 and she was in an open ballet class and he was taught by a young company member male, and he gave jumps the way he takes jumps in class. You know, there's no fault to this guy, right? If he just is teaching a class the way he takes class, and he just gives jumps, like he just gives five jump combinations and she throws her back out. And it's like, I mean,
Yeah.
like I get where the guy is coming from, but also we're talking about
Oh,
people who maybe
totally.
don't jump before. So,
Yeah.
you know, even just coming back postpartum, the postpartum 5 month plan include the return to jumps program about how to return safely and how to hold your pelvic floor. And there's checks about if you're holding your abs properly before you're even allowed to start jumping or even
Yeah.
recommended to start jumping. So to me, I think that which is just so casually tossed in to a bunch of people who haven't jumped in years
Yeah.
is just, I mean, if we're talking about dangerous stuff that we do in ballet class, I've
Yeah.
got a bone to pick with
Yeah.
that. Not that you can't do jumps safely, but just the fact that it's casually tossed in there with no
Totally.
lead up. Like you're not even
Yeah.
trying with the bar first. You're just tossing them in and expecting them to be able to keep up, but then they hurt themselves.
I know. I always feel like jumps in especially in, like, an open class is just, like, the Wild West. I'm like,
Wild West.
this is it's kinda wild, and I think especially maybe if you took ballet as a kid, you're a little more desensitized to, like, "Oh, this is
Right.
just what we do." But it's like if you can step back from an outsider's perspective or even people that are, like, very fit, but maybe it's a different type of fitness, like, they go to the gym, they do stuff, and it's like, just think about watching the last, like, 15 minutes of a ballet class through the eyes of somebody who is not as familiar with it as you are, and you'll probably be like, "Oh my god, this is crazy." Like, this is insane. We're going across the floor in groups, like, we're trying not to run into each other. I'm supposed to do
Yeah.
what now, on what, and land on which foot, and like you said, it's always that split second of questioning, like, right foot or left foot, or which direction is my body turning? Like, those are always those moments that it seems like something happens, and yeah, to contrast that with, like you said, I mean, I totally agree in thinking about this. I'm like, yeah, it's so true. I think my my point training has made me a safer dancer overall, just in the sense of you gain so much more body awareness, and I think you just approach things more thoughtfully, and so, yeah, it is really funny how, for some reason, pointe has this reputation of being, like, the most dangerous thing you can do in ballet, and I
Yeah.
totally agree. I'm like, "Yeah, I think it would maybe be jumps."
I think it made me jumps. I mean, what was James Whiteside who recently a few years ago threw his knee out landing a jump on stage, right? Like this is
Yeah,
if we're talking about what is dangerous, like yeah, I mean, I'm not diminishing that point is something that we need to have respect for and all of that, but
yeah,
like the fact that ballet has just like picked randomly the point is like so the end all be all of dangerous things. Like we
yes,
just
totally.
randomly picked and choose that this one is like so scary and dangerous. And like just telling people casually to turn out without explaining to them how they should keep their knees over their toes, or just like casually telling people to do an arabesque without telling them how to use their core to support their back, or just like casually having people do petit allegro. Like these, we
Yeah,
just picked like one thing. If I had my way, all of this would have a leading up to it, right? And the way I teach, everything has a leading up to it and a preparation for it. But like
yeah.
we just gatekeep this one particular thing, and I think it's just kind of funny.
Yeah, it is. It's a really interesting take, and I think it's good to examine that from a point of logic, not just the fear-based mentality, which I think it definitely can have surrounding point. So for dancers who are listening and thinking, "Okay, based on all of this, maybe I'm not quite ready yet." What is the most important thing that they should be doing right now? And I guess if there's like overall tips, or if, there's a specific area of like, if you feel like you're not ready strength wise, here's things you could do. If you're not ready in another category, I would just love to hear from you. What are some of the most common things that dancers can do to start getting ready?
Yeah, definitely. So taking ballet class is super helpful for getting generally physically in shape. But like I said, if ballet class doesn't specifically address those four areas of readiness that I talked about, then working on those outside of your ballet class can be really helpful. Not that you need to stop taking ballet class. I mean, we love ballet class. Don't stop taking ballet class. But if you really want to go on point or you have a very specific desire for it, then outside of class, you want to start really working on your four areas. So working on the strength of your toes and your feet, especially. So getting a either a little Pilates ball or a resistance band and starting to work on your exercises with your TheraBand, being very specific to spread your toes on the way down and up in the point. It's not just about pointing everything as a unit, but it's about how can you fan your toes out and really use them like fingers. Like doing maybe many of you are listening on audio, but basically trying to create like a wave motion with your hands. You want your feet to be able to make that same type of motion. When it comes to getting your point shoes on your toes, you need to be able to manipulate your point shoes. And so if they can't manipulate in the air, they're going to have a hard time in the point shoes.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that ballet class doesn't give you. You'll even see the pros doing their TheraBands and doing their exercises outside of ballet class because it's something that's really specific. And yes, once you know how to do it, you can use it in tendu, and tendu works your feet and all of that stuff. But doing it outside of class can really, really make a big difference in your journey to point. When it comes to the flexibility of the ankles, this really depends on where you're starting from. If you're starting from having already flexible or hypermobile ankles, it's a very different situation than from having tighter feet or from tighter ankles or tighter toes. I do have a free self assessment on my website if you want to take it, which has an in depth questionnaire of all of the areas that I talked about with pictures, so you can tell and compare your own body with it and see what where you are, so you at least know where you're starting from. If you're starting from a less flexible foot or less flexible ankle, then massage is your friend. You're getting a massage ball, you're massaging under your arches, you're massaging your shins, you're massaging the top of your shin with a foam roller, you're massaging your calves. My favorite calf massage is to get on your hands and knees and use your other kneecap to dig into your calf. So you're really getting a lot of pressure on that calf. You want to loosen up as much tissue as you can around your ankles and around your feet. Then the with lower leg strength, this one's easy. Do your releves all the time. Do your releves all the time. Do your releves in plie. This strengthens your soleus underneath your calf. So get into plie and do your releves there, making sure you really have your weight over your big toe and your second toe. Your pinky toe should barely be touching the ground, if at all. If you got a long pinky toe, maybe I can touch, but really focus on your pinky toe barely on the floor. The natural human thing to do is to releve with your pinky toes on the floor. Like, you're on Instagram and you see all the gym bros doing their calf raises, and I'm like, you're all doing them wrong. Like, I get that this is what you're doing in the gym, but like, no, this is not how you do a releve. Thank you.
So funny.
So then the last thing, if I could only pick one thing about your technique, I would love to pick all the things, but if I could only pick one thing about your technique and your strength, is to do releve passes with your bar and without your bar all the time, from two legs to one leg, and work on that balance. Start on flat, start holding onto your bar. See if you can hold passe. See if you can get up and down quickly, slowly, however you can do it, and start working on your stability. If you find areas in there that need more help, maybe you feel you're wobbling a lot, get on the floor and do some abs, do some glute bridges, work on the areas that are weaker. But that is going to be your big highlighter of what the areas that are missing in your technique is, getting those releve passes. So if I could, that's not picking one thing, that's picking four things, but that's one thing per area. Okay. So hopefully it counts. And then if I could just give one more big thing, is to work on your perfectionism. Because once you do get to point, it will drive you crazy. It drives all of us crazy, including the ones who are not perfectionists. Point is really hard. And so getting used to the feeling of, that's why I also suggest releve passes, because getting used to the feeling of not being so good at something is a big part of starting point, because the beginning of point is surprisingly challenging.
Yeah.
In some ways we know it's going to be hard, but we don't know how it's going to be hard, or like the ways in which it's
Yes.
going to be hard. We think it's going to be painful hard, but actually it's hard because it's hard to get up. It's like hard to
Yeah.
control the shoes, right? Would you say
Yeah.
that's how,
Oh,
like, it's different?
totally. Yeah, and I think it's I mean, it ends up being a gift, but I think in the moment, at least this is how I felt, it was almost in some ways like starting over in ballet again.
Yes.
I was like, "Oh, cool, I've worked really hard the last few years to feel like I'm, you know, a little bit competent at this, and now I get to just go back to square one." And so I think
Fair one.
being mentally prepared for that, and just knowing that, like, everyone feels that way, so not feeling bad about it, or I think most people probably feel that way, so don't feel like you're the problem if you get on point and you're like, "Oh, I'm learning to dance again, great." So for someone who has listened to this and maybe has the opposite thought of like, "Oh, I do feel like maybe I'm ready," what are the next steps that they should be preparing for?
Definitely look for a teacher or a class who actually offers a separate beginner point class, not just like doing beginner bar in your point shoes. Because doing beginner bar in your point shoes isn't the place to learn points, because the corrections that a teacher is giving to a group of beginners is very different than the corrections that you need as a beginner point dancer. So a group of beginners is learning what is a tendu and where should your arm go, and you need, as a beginner point dancer, to learn what should your toes be doing, what should your glutes be doing, what should your ankles be doing, what's the shape of your point shoe, and those are learned in a very different environment. So sometimes if you ask your teacher, like, can I go on point, they might be like, sure, you can wear point shoes to my beginner class. And if you are desperate, you can, but I do not recommend it, just because it's not actually going to teach you points. It will teach you beginner ballet, which you already know because you're getting on point. You already know beginner ballet. You need to learn beginner point, which is taught in a very different way. And so in a beginner point class, the majority of the time is learning how to get up and then how to get back down, and then how to get up and then how to get back down. So all the things you thought you knew in flat shoes, pas de bourrée, a balance, a releve passe, even just getting up on point in first position, these things all become like a whole topic of discussion. Even like how to do a tendu is a whole different thing, because you have to use your toes differently in the shoes versus in your slippers. So basically, you, like Hannah said, you go back to square one, if not square zero. But like, if you picture it, you've taken the elevator up a level, and then you're on square one of that level. Like, you're not actually on square one,
Yeah.
one of the beginner level. Like, you took the elevator up a floor, and you're starting fresh on that particular floor. So what you ought to look forward to is, like, I get comments like, "Oh, this doesn't even feel like ballet. Like, this is so different from ballet." And it's like, yeah, it is. It's a whole, like, you are going to enter a whole new world, and it is full of so much self-discovery and so much wonder and just like awe. And you will never go to a ballet performance and look at them the same way, because now you know what goes into it. You will never like see ballet the same way again. You just like are in for a whole treat of just like seeing the whole ballet world anew, and just like getting to look at all of it through fresh eyes, right? Like It's a very cool, and I know Pointe isn't the end all be all for every dancer. Not everyone even wants to go on Pointe, and that's fine. There's so much to do in ballet other than Pointe. But if Pointe is your jam and this is like what you really want, um, it's gonna be a great time. It's gonna be like, yeah, it's gonna be different than you thought. So different than you thought, but it's gonna
Yeah.
be super fun.
I know it's so funny. I laugh now because whenever I take my husband with me to ballet, I'm sure he's just like, "Oh my gosh, stop!" Because every time they do something, I'm like, "You have no idea how hard that is. Like, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible." And he's like, "Okay, okay." But I think
I get it. I get it.
yeah, once you're doing anything on point, the appreciation for how much it takes to perform at that level, I'm just like forever in awe of professional dancers. I wanted to ask you real quickly what your perspective is on Demi Point shoes, because I know I've seen this on social media a little bit of people that
Yep.
are using that as like an in between step. So maybe if
Mhm.
even just for someone who has never heard of them, if you could give a quick like this is what they are and what your thoughts are on them.
Yeah. So demi point shoes are a point shoe, but with no shank. So what that means is they have a hard toe, but they don't have the part that goes under your foot that supports you all the way up on the box. The reason people would like demi point shoes as an intermediary is because they make your feet work a little bit harder when you're in your soft shoes. So like instead of being in your soft shoes, you're in these demi point shoes. So your tendus are harder, balancing on flat is harder. And so you kind of get some of those hard things out of the way before you go on point, where you have all those hard things plus actually getting all the way up onto point. The second reason is demi point shoes provide more resistance for you in your releves. So if you are having a really hard time getting a higher releve, you could do releves with weights, right, to get a higher releve. If or you could do releves in demi point shoes. They will provide resistance for your releves. My thought on demi point shoes is this: if you are taught how to use them correctly, they can be a great tool. But if you just wear them to class and no one teaches you what your feet should be doing inside, then you're basically not getting anything out of them. Because what you are doing inside of your shoes is very different than what you're doing in your soft shoes. How you're using your toes to articulate, how you're using your toes to puppeteer your point shoes or your demi point shoes is a very different feeling than in your soft shoes. And so just going to ballet class wearing demi point shoes, if your teacher is not saying what should be happening inside of those shoes, is not really benefiting you too much. Like you will get the benefit of releves being harder. So in a sense, they can help, but in another sense, if point is your lifelong dream, like demi point shoes, I don't exactly know how to put this, but demi point shoes can almost like take some of that dream away from you because you're going to see just how hard everything is, but not have the actual fun of going up on point. So I don't know. That's my sort of 2 cents on the topic.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because I think standing up on point and seeing yourself in that position is like the reward of
All the
of
hard
like all
stuff.
the struggle. And so I kind
Yeah.
of I never used demi point shoes. I to be honest, I did not even know they existed until a couple years ago. I had
Yeah.
no clue that they were even a thing. And so I was like, what are these demi point shoes? But yeah, it's like being able to go up is the reason, I mean, even sometimes to this day, I'm like, I've been doing point for I think like 3 years now, and I still sometimes when I'm having a hard class, it's like just standing in Susu on your point shoes and looking at yourself in the mirror is enough to be like, "Okay, you got this. It's worth it."
It's worth it.
So
Yeah. Right.
so what is next as far as this series? Do you wanna give everyone listening kind of a sneak peek of what our next 2 episodes are gonna cover?
Yeah. So we're going to start covering the point journey itself. So what goes into the point journey and some of those ups and downs that Hannah was talking about, some of the mental aspect of it, of actually once you do get up on point. So if you're already on point, these are going to be really fun episodes for you. Maybe some parts will be a little bit, hit close to home and hopefully give you some solace in your point journey. And if you are wanting to get up on point, hopefully gives you some perspective about why the training is going to be helpful and why what you're doing now is going to help you in your point journey and the different things. So we're going to dive deep into all the different challenges that are specific to adults learning point and getting up on those beautiful toes.
Yeah, so fun. It's really such a special part of the journey if it's something that you have dreamed of. I think like you said earlier, it might not be something that you really want to do. Like I dance with people at my studio that are like, "Yeah, I'm good. It's fine, whatever." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, that's great." But I think if you I always tell people like if you are one of those dancers that has that deep desire in your heart that is just you cannot shake off, I think do what you got to do to make it happen because it's
Yep.
really cool to finally know what it's like. It gives you a deeper appreciation for your body. It gives you a deeper appreciation for, like we talked about earlier, watching professional dancers on stage. I'm really grateful to the Pointe experience overall, just for the things that it's given me as a person. And so I'm always like, just do it. Don't ignore the little voice in your head and in your heart, if that's you. So yeah, I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to this series.
yeah, don't ignore that voice. I think sometimes you see the message on social media that, there's more to ballet than point, and that is true. However, if point is in your heart, then in some cases there is not more to ballet than point, and you really want the point shoes. And for some people, that is what matters the most to them. And if that's the case for you, then dive in. And if it's not the case for you, don't worry about it. There's so much you'll spend your entire life working on your ballet journey without point shoes. But if it is for you, then let's get to it.
Yeah, totally. So how can people, I'm sure probably almost everyone listening to this already knows who you are, because I think you are the absolute best in the business. But for those listening who may not know, where can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, connect with me. I'm on all the socials at Broche Ballet or Julie the Ballerina, and my website's brocheballet.com. And the hopefully we'll have the journey to point self assessment for you. But if you can't find it, send me a message, and I'll be happy to send you the free self assessment to see where you are and what you need to work on to get up on point. So I'm always happy to hear about your point journey, and just guided hundreds, if not 1,000 at this point, through points. So I'm very honored to be in this rather unique place to have guided so many adults through point, because I think a lot of people don't have even access to that many adults to teach point, because in one given area there's not as many adults. So being able to reach people worldwide, I've had the very unique ability to teach just so many adults on point, and work through it. So you're not alone in it, no matter which of the types that we talked about or where you are in your journey. And you're part of it. You're part of a great group of people.
Yeah, yeah, and specifically, I love the Broche community online. There's so many of us that follow each other on Instagram and cheer each other on and support each other. And so if you're looking for the right platform and the right program to go through, I just cannot recommend your program enough, because it comes with your amazing expertise and support, and it also comes with a really lovely community of adult dancers that's been super fun to be part of. So I'll link everything in the show notes, including the assessment and links to Julie's platform. But thank you so much for being with me today, Julie. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Excited for part two.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It really helps more adult dancers find the podcast. All the links and resources we mentioned today are waiting for you in the show notes. And if you want more adult ballet content in between episodes, come hang out with me on Instagram at @thebusybunhead. See you next week after class.